Good morning, everybody. I welcome you to another fascinating class of our HSS Laises 104, Introduction to Economic History. So in this class, we'll be discussing, we're having combining two topics today, as we've always done, because we have quite a lot to cover and the time is not really on our side. So today we want to try to explore World Economic System 1. Do you remember that we mentioned that we'll be taking World Economic System in two phases? World Economic System 1, which will cover mercantilism and laissez-faire. Then maybe next week or per week, we'll look at World Economic System 2, where we'll look at capitalism, socialism, mixed economy, and so. So, but today, what we want to do today is to explore World Economic System 1. All right. Then we'll also consider another interesting topic, which is Malthus population theory. So this would enable us to understand, to have a deeper understanding of how population growth, all right, economic systems are actually interconnected. And so the purpose of this course topic is perhaps for us to be able to understand and describe what economic system is all about, and perhaps show the attribute of economic system and its capacity in transforming or shaping productive activities in different society. So it will enable us to be able to classify the main features of each economic system for us to understand what kind of economic system is country A is practicing, and what kind of economic system is country B or C adopting. So the overarching objective, of course, is to make everyone familiar with the concept of economic system and its various types, its ramifications and applications in different contexts. So the specific objective is to enable you to understand the significant points, like what is economic system and its imperative, right? To understand types of economic system, to understand the argument, the advantage, all right, and disadvantage, that is the merit of specific economic systems and the merit of each economic systems. Then to look at its application, there are various applications in various contexts, right? So we'll start by defining, before we go into the substance, main substance, such as considering mercantilism and laissez-faire, we will try to first define the economic system. What is economic system? All right. So it is important for us to first be able to conceptualize a particular idea or concept that we want to interrogate for us to have a robust understanding or engagement with it. So economic system can be defined or described as the ways in which different societies obtain their daily needs, such as food, such as uh, productive activities, goods and services. All right, so it is a system also in which through which societies arrange or organize, all right, for providing their material needs. So it is the way in which each society cater for the social necessities of life, all right, such as employment, such as economic activities, productivity, distribution of goods and services, the kind of ways in which even consumption. So economic system is a method adopted mostly by a state or an economic unit or a bloc, all right, a kind of like, okay, maybe you say Western Europe, right? They have a particular economic system that they adopt. Or in the past, we used to say Soviet Union. The Soviet Union, which has its own economic ideology, it operated, which was basically socialism, and a blend of communism, right? So in Western Europe, those are practicing neoliberal policies, all right, capitalism. Those are issues we are going to interrogate. So, economic system is a method adopted by a state or an economic unit or a bloc, an assemblage of countries, right, in the production and distribution of their goods and services. All right. So this is also can be explained. It will also include how people in their social and political affairs, achieve a fair and a just society. It also speaks about how society distributes or redistributes the available resources in each society, such as land, such as capital, right? The wealth of a nation. I believe most of you must have done basic economics in secondary school, and you must have read or been told about the classic work by Adam Smith, all right, an inquiry into the nature and wealth of nations, all right, which speaks about the ways or manner in which national resources are utilized, all right, for to achieve efficiency, to achieve economic growth and development. So economic system is about how it describes a set of rules or arrangement by which our societies determine what shall be produced, how they shall be produced, for whom they are produced. Okay, so it helps in a way to help to organize a society in a way to achieve some kind of equity, or perhaps not equality, equity, so that there is fairness. Some groups are not largely contented or well fulfilled, while some groups are marginalized or neglected. So that is to say that it helps to shape the productive system of each country. So you can also say the economic system is a method of coordinating economic activities such as production, distribution in a particular domain. So it is the system adopted by government mostly in planning, in organization and distribution. So countries don't just produce, countries don't just exist, countries don't just develop. The historical trajectory of each country in the world today is determined or shaped, all right, by the economic systems that characterize that society. What kind of economic systems characterizes the Western society, the Western Europe, for instance, America, the US economy? What economic model characterizes that of China? All right. Why is China so prosperous economically? So, what kind of economic model is China adopting? All right, in its everyday uh, economic productive activities. So, what differentiates China from Russia? What economic model is Russia adopting? Then, when you place them side by side with the West, like the US or the UK, all right, the EU, what kind of economic model are they adopting? So it helps economic systems helps you to understand, okay, why is one country developed and the other not developed? And it will tell you also, if you have read the book by the famous political economist, or the book which won the Nobel Prize for the three scholars, Darren Asimogu and James Robinson, all right, will also explain how economic systems operated by different countries determine the level of growth, development, or advancement they achieve. All right, and I will come to that probably when we are looking at capitalism, all right, and socialism. Right. So I've said that it's an arrangement under which the available resources of the state can be harnessed and utilized in order to achieve the satisfaction of the welfare needs of the members of the society. That is the overarching trust of a good economic system, right? Because it should provide the necessary guidelines on how the means of livelihoods could be obtained. All right. When we are looking at various world systems, you get to understand this. So economic system regulates what individuals or firms, corporations, uh, do with regards to the services or goods they render to the society. So people don't just produce because just think that I want to start a pure water factory today and I just start. So this, there are guidelines, there are procedures, there are protocols, All right, there are standards, all right, that are stipulated for each firm, individuals to follow in the productive activities they intend to engage. So generally, an economic system takes into account all aspects of society's life, including social, including political and economic. So a country would not just want to adopt a particular policy because it is such suitable. So there had to be consideration had to be given to the overarching effect of such economic policy on social realities in the society, on crime, on unemployment, on inflation, all right, on food security, scarcity, all right, on wealth distribution, equality or inequality, all right. So this same thing also applies to the political domain. Also applies to the political domain. An economic model adopted in a particular location would also have an intricate connection, right, to the political landscape of that polity, right? For instance, China, you could see China in the past. China used to be a socialist country, all right, adopting community blend of communism and all right socialism historically, but of course from the 1970s when there was need for China for 40s to 70s for China to rediversify its economy, especially to achieve economic growth. It's started blending this command political and economic model with the Western, what is adopted from the West, the capitalist neoliberal policy. So politically, China, all right, operates a kind of socialist model, but economically, China adopts the neoliberal economic principle, and that is why China is able to leapfrog and compare to other countries. All right, China in the about 100 years before was a poor country. All right, a century less than a century ago, it was a very very poor country. All right, with large population unable to feed itself. Right, but practicing some kind of command, authoritarian socialist political system. All right, but it came to a time with, especially with time of Mao Zedong, when it realized that we have to develop, we have to open up. All right, so politically it maintained its orientation, but economically China continued to adopt, for instance, the neoliberal capitalist model. All right, that of the United States and Western Europe. So this actually speaks about free trade, all right, movement of capital, and here that we are going to discuss that. And since then, we have seen the pace in which China has been moving economically. All right, is the second largest economy in the world, or after the United States. So, economic system, therefore, uh, as key fundamental objectives, as you can see on your screen, basically is to achieve rational, fair, and judicious utilization of national resources. All right, at a of a unit or a country, is to also ensure proper coordination and regulation of units properly in order to achieve efficiency. Okay, so for instance, I mentioned that the essence is to coordinate, regulate, so that people, an unscrupulous group of persons, should not just come up to say that I want to start producing Coca-Cola without having the technical, the skill set, all right, the expertise, all right, the erudition of skills to really produce that, all right, and just poisoning people, all right. Or another person say that I want to go into real estate sector. I want to start building houses and renting out without having the requisite credentials or potential to really do that. All right, to prevent people events whereby houses will be collapsing and people. So economic system try to regulate the allocation and appropriation, the utilization of land resources and capital. All right, so it also ensure rapid economic development and growth, and also to satisfy the basic necessity of life of the people, such as food, shelter, clothes, and others. As Marx said, the essence of dialectical materialism is that human being must first eat, drink, and have good shelter before thinking of anything else, including politics, economy, social, marriage, or any other thing. So, based on this foregoing conceptualization, so we can say that economic system deals with how to produce. I've mentioned that, what to produce, and to whom, and the quality or quantity that should be produced. What kind of strain will be upon the scarce resources? All right, what will be the decision-making process in the productive process, and all of this. Also, I've mentioned that there are different systems. All right, the traditional economic system, which I believe you have considered. I sent the slide of the traditional economic system to you last week, especially in Africa. All right. So we have various different economic systems, the traditional economic system. Then we have mercantilism in the past. All right. It's no longer popular, but the most popular ones are now capitalism or market economy. You have socialism or planned economy and mixed economy. All right. So in this course today, we'll be looking at mercantilism and laissez-faire, the two which coexisted together at the same time, all right, before the 20th century. Okay, so we want to see the ways in which these economic systems differ from each other and how they shape economic and political developments in their various contexts. So this economic system, as we have mentioned, they differ in terms of ownership of resources, in terms of allocation of resources, in terms of the production incentives, then decision making. So in this class, we'll focus we focus on mercantilism and laissez-faire. So next week, when we want to continue with what system two, we would then go into capitalism and socialism. Right. So have I made the introduction very clear now? So we'll go into the two we want to consider today, which is mercantilism and laissez-faire. All right. So how did laissez-faire, how did they evolve? What were the circumstances in the face of what condition or circumstance or situation were they developed in Europe and America, right? And how did they contribute to domestic and global economy during the period? So it is important to note that Europeans, our society experienced rapid socioeconomic changes beginning from the 16th century. All right. And this was the period following the Middle Ages, also referred to in European history as the medieval period. So medieval period is a period, all right, where Europe cascaded into a kind of underdevelopment. It was underdeveloped, it was crude. Society was feudal in nature. The kings and the church perhaps governed the affairs of the state. So like the preceding years, which was characterized by feudalism, all right, where a system of production in which property rights were vested in the hands of the kings, as I've mentioned. So this new period from the 16th century witnessed the emergence of powerful nation states, all right, in which power was situated equally, in equally strong central government. Some emergent new states were, England, France, Netherlands, and so. So I think in 200 level, when you are doing a course titled Introduction to International Relations or so, so you will be taught about the Treaty of Westphalia, all right, and how that actually 1648 or so, which marked the beginning of the evolution of the modern state system. So it was during this period that societies began to realize that rather than vesting power, all right, in the hands of the kings, just as we have in Africa, where you have the Oba, the Alaafin, rather than the Alaafin being the like the absolute monarch, all right, controlling the land resources, collecting tolls, all the stuff. That it was necessary to have a modern state structure, all right, where resources, all right, to be equally or evenly appropriated and allocated. And it was under this circumstance that these two major economic systems evolved, mercantilism and laissez-faire. So we look at mercantilism. So the key objective for us is to be able to discuss mercantilism, to be able to identify the argument for and against mercantilism. That is, what are the advantages and disadvantages of mercantilism? To discuss also laissez-faire in the same way, looking at the factors that worked for it and the factors that worked against it. Okay, so we'll go into mercantilism right away. So what is mercantilism? So as you've seen on the screen, it is the economic theory and system that characterized Europe between the 16th and the 18th centuries. So it's a kind of economic model which developed and promoted government regulations of a nation's economy, especially for the purpose of augmenting state power at the expense of rival national power. Right? So you understand that the 15th, 16th, and 17th century, 18th century was a significant epoch in European history. It was a period where I talked about that Europe was just coming out of the medieval era, right? So there is, of course, 15th century, there had been the maritime revolution, all right, which enabled European powers to be able to discover other places in the world, all right. So before the 15th century, Europe existed. Perhaps the only interactions it enjoyed with other parts of the world was with Asia, all right, through the Eastern Europe. So, but due to several events in the 15th century, there was need for the European countries to also explore that part of the world. And by the 15th century, the maritime revolution occurred, which enabled Europeans to be able to travel, to build sophisticated navigational equipment to travel across the Atlantic. All right, of course. So it was under this circumstance that mercantilism as a political and economic theory or system developed. All right, of course, one of the key events that characterized the period was competitions among the various European powers on who is to travel to dominate a particular areas discovered in Africa, in Asia, in America. So, in other words, governmental control was to be exercised over industry and trade, all right, international trade, in accordance with the theory that national strength is increased by preponderance of export and import. So this mercantilism has to do with international trade. All right. So unlike in the medieval era, where the concentration of the states, all right, was basically uh, characterized by the feudal system, where just the kings just monopolize all the resources. People work. Individuals don't have the power to own the land. Every power and rights over land and resources were in the hands of the kings and members of the royal and the noble class. All right, so the society didn't progress. All right, so in this era from the 16th to 18th century, when it was realized that there was need to now place emphasis on national strength, all right, institutions should emerge, structure, state systems and structures should emerge to be able to develop society beyond domestic cultivation, agriculture, and all this stuff. That there's need for international trade, especially export and imports, right? So all of these develop. So the primary aim of mercantilists was to basically build strong, wealthy, and independent nation states by promoting economic self-sufficiency. So it was realized that feudalism was not going to engender sustainability or efficiency or economic growth. The best you could do is to produce at a subsistent level, all right, and for which much of what was produced would be taken, will be consumed by the members of the royal and the upper class in the society. So the word mercantilism was actually popularized by the famous, all right, Adam Smith, political economist Adam Smith, who used it to describe the dominant economic ideas of the 16th and 18th centuries. Right? Are we together? Are we still together?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so let's go rapidly to look at what are the arguments of mercantilists. What are the main thrust of mercantilists? So those who advocate for mercantilist system or doctrine believe that precious resources, precious metals such as gold and silver, were indispensable to a nation's wealth. All right. And once a nation did not possess some of these mines from which it could accumulate this metal, it was free to seek them through trade. And they realized that, especially from the 15th century when they started exploring. So before then, they have heard about how Africa, for instance, was so rich in gold. Of course, from the 12th century, they had witnessed the 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 traveling of Africa's most richest king, Mansa Musa, who had traveled to Mecca and from there to Europe and crashed the European economy on account of the enormous gold that he packed to Europe. So societies in Europe realized that feudalism was not a sign, a symbol of wealth, that precious metals and resources, all right, embedded in other places outside Europe was a significant factor in defining the wealth of a nation. Right? And so they started seeking international trade and network contacts, all right, with people outside Europe. So the protagonists easily point to the fact that Spain's most powerful years of development had occurred when it first reaped a bullion harvest from its overseas expansion. Don't forget that Spain and Portugal were the first European countries that started the voyage of exploration. Traveling out of Europe from the 15th century, right? The likes of Christopher Columbus, the Vasco da Gama, all right, Bartolomeu Ruiz, Amerigo Vespucci, and all of these people were the ones, Spanish and Portuguese, who first sailed out of Europe from the 15th century and came back with bounty, golds, and mineral resources. So it became a clarion call for the various European powers to also develop on account of this mercantilist doctrine. So mercantilists argued that colonial possessions were significant to serve as suppliers of raw materials and markets for exports. All right, so that when countries in Europe acquire areas like from the 15th century, all right, most of the areas the Europeans encountered were acquired, like America was acquired by the Europeans, by all right, the Spanish, then the English people, many parts of South America, Brazil, by the Portuguese, and all of this. So they believe that colonial possessions was the basis, all right, or the basic source of obtaining raw materials. So, like in America, America, for instance, after the discovery was converted into plantation sites, all right, producing cotton, producing sugar, all right, which were exported back to Europe and all of that for manufacturing, for consumption, and all of this. So they believe that the mother country was expected to draw raw materials from its possessions. The English people drew large amount of raw materials from America, from Africa, all right, the Spanish, the French, the Dutch, all right, all of them, all right, the Belgians, and selling the finished goods back to the colonial areas with the balance of trade favoring the mother countries. So this trade, they argue, must be monopolistic, with all foreign intruders barred. So they believe that a strong nation must have a large population, all right, given its a large population, given that this is a veritable source of labor, market, and soldiers. So that is to say that the the acquisition of colonies was central to the functioning of mercantilism, because it is based on idea of international expansion and extraction of resources from these uh, colonial areas right outside their domain in Africa. Am I making sense still? So uh, let's look at the argument generally that revolves around mercantilism. What are the critical argument or basic proposition of this mercantilism? All right. So the general overall trust of mercantilism is that it was premised on the idea that the wealth of a nation depends primarily on the possession of gold and silver, such as precious metals, all right, or bullion. It was also believed that overseas trade should be encouraged, all right. And as a matter of fact, it was said that a nation without precious metal could probably acquire them through trade, especially by maintaining favorable balance of exports over imports. So that, okay, if you don't have a colonial area in Africa or Asia, you could also trade with those people, all right, and exchange what you have to get those gold, to get those diamond and all those resources. All right. So they also believe that a strong central government was necessary, not only to enforce and regulate business, but also to acquire and maintain colonial territories. So, for instance, under the medieval era, where the king was, it was not important, it was not possible for the king to extend his influence to other areas in Asia, in Africa, in America. Okay, so they believe that to do that, a central government, a state system, state structure, and machinery must develop to be able to enforce and maintain this colonial area. So it is also advisable. They also advocate that it was necessary to establish monopolies. I believe you all know what monopolies is. All right, to dominate, all right, to institute protected tariffs and regulate trade, so that in a particular sphere, colonial sphere, like maybe say in Congo, you could see that's a good example. So there was the Belgians, all right, established monopoly over the resources, all right, in Congo. Congo, which is now the Democratic Republic of Congo, Dr. Congo, is the richest site on the planet Earth on account of the enormous deposit of various mineral resources. You want to talk about gold, uranium, all right? You want to cobalt, all kind of name all the mineral resources. So during this period, emerging states like Belgium established monopolies and instituted protected tariffs and regulatory to be sure that no European power interfered with resources. So imagine the French did the same in their own sphere of influence, the British did the same, the Dutch did the same in South Africa and all of this. So in fact, manufacturing and mining industries also was said to be encouraged and protected with subsidies so at home. So they also believe that nations must encourage the development of agriculture at home, given that it leads to national self-sufficiency, all right, and helps to supply raw materials needed by the industry. This is quite different from the feudal system, whereby the agricultural system was done under the auspices of the kings. So they believe that it was important to have a strong marines, that is shipping industry. All right, if you have read the work by Alfred Mackinder, all right, where he argued that he who rules the world island rules the world Atlant, and he who rules the world Atlant rules the world. So the international trade, the seaborne movement, argued Alfred Mackinder, was the key to economic prosperity of any nation. So he believed that a country which possesses strong navigational equipment and technology or dominates the seaborne movement will probably be the global hegemon, and that was characterized by the British, all right, and also other countries. But British was for so long was a superpower in the world because of its possession of the strong and sophisticated navigational technology. All right, so they believe that every nation needs a large population which would serve as a source of labor market for them. So overall, we can say that mercantilism enhanced the social and political status of the merchant class, all right, in Europe. It also provided favorable climates for the early development of capitalism, as we are going to see subsequently. So, what are the arguments against mercantilism? So those who condemn a lot of mercantilism have come under intense attack. All right. So scholars have criticized mercantilist doctrine for various reasons. Of course, indeed, it was some of these reasons that because of this reason that the doctrine became unpopular. All right. For instance, many people fought it over its emphasis on supremacy of precious material. What you don't have in your own place, you want to go and steal it elsewhere through colonialism, right? Through suppression and imposition of torture, brutality on other people, as we saw, we have read in Congo, all right, in French West Africa, Francophone West Africa, in the Anglophone Africa, West Africa, in East Africa, the atrocities, the murder, the brutality, the torture, the rape, the maiming of people, the looting of resources by all of this. So mercantilism came under that. If you don't have something, why must you enact a policy, a system, all right, to go and steal, because it's to loot them from other places. So in fact, with the growth of banking and expansion of the market economy, this undue reliance on gold and silver as measure of wealth reduced considerably. So that is, mercantilism was considered not quite sustainable, right, for the international political economy. In addition, development in science and technology also made it possible for several nations to be able to participate in and in fact reap from global economy, all right, which actually shows that the world, the index indicators of development or wealth cannot necessarily be only gold and diamond. All right, we have seen that. All right, several, the industrial revolution took place. All right, in the 18th century thereabout, right? And we've seen all kind of transformation in the human society, the aviation industry, all right, the steam, all right, technology. Now we're talking about the fifth industrial revolution, ICT revolution. Has shown that. So how long will the world continue to rely on gold and diamond, even though they still constitute a major index of wealth? All right. Moreover, it was also argued that mercantilism promoted the feeling of dependence by some nations, which ran contrary to the tenet of free enterprise. All right. It creates that. So European countries must always depend on the areas they were able to acquire in Africa before they can develop. So, but by and large, it was the emergence of laissez-faire, all right, an alternative philosophy that signaled the eventual collapse of mercantilist system. Okay, so we'll go to what is laissez-faire now. So at this juncture, we'll look at laissez-faire. What is laissez-faire? So the word laissez-faire is a French word which connotes let things alone. But if you want to put it away, okay, let things be done without interference. All right, without interference. We've talked about that mercantilism. One critical tenet of mercantilism was monopoly protectionism, to make sure that this is my own area of influence in Africa. Maybe in the case of France or Belgium, all right, this is my area. I've acquired this player. No European countries must come in here. I want to be the only one to explore the gold, the diamond, the mineral resources in this place. So, but laissez-faire policies all right, came to say that no, let things be done, freely, without any encumbrance, without any restriction. So, however, it's also an economic principle representing the policy of domestic non-interference by government in individual or industrial monetary affairs. So this system, why not too far-fetched from the earlier the mercantilist, but this one favored capitalist self-interest. All right. As a matter of fact, it is a precursor to the neoliberal capitalist system that the world is largely adopting. All right. So it encourage competition, natural consumer preferences as forcing as forces leading to optimal prosperity and freedom. So it's one of the economic doctrine that was introduced before capitalism took over. So in this under this laissez-faire, the role of the state was to maintain order and security and to avoid interference. So they believe that individuals and firms and organizations should have the imperative, the ability, the freedom to pursue their desired goal. Whether any company or individuals who wants to acquire land for various productive activities should be given the freedom. Those who want to go follow international principles to embark on various import and export and acquisition of raw materials elsewhere should do so without any restriction. So this philosophy was in line with the survivor for the fittest, all right, theory by Charles Darwin, who propounded the evolution theory, all right, the origin of the species in 1859. And he argued that, he propounded the argument for the survivor of the fittest, that it is the survivor, the strongest that should be the richest, that there should not be any monopoly, there should not be restrictions to where people go, how people acquire their wealth, all right, who should control the land, dictate the pace of the economy, the dynamics of production, and all of that. And this was, a philosophy which is usually associated with the French economist known as physiocrats, all right, who flourished between 1756 and 1778. So this philosophy was later to be expounded by the central and indomitable figure in economics, all right, Adam Smith, who classic work, Inquiry into the Wealth of Nations, 1776, redefined the core of laissez-faire. So Adam Smith advocated a policy of free trade so that the invisible hand of competition, or what he said, invisible hand of the market, could act as an economic indicator or regulator, so that there is no need for any international or any governmental control or monopoly, in any economic domain. That the invisible hand of the market, let competition, let the space be open for competition, free competition, and the strongest perhaps will be the ones to maximize the return. So in line with Adam Smith's writing, several other scholars, including David Ricardo, all right, who propounded the theory of comparative advantage or comparative cost advantage theory, all right, comparative advantage, and John X. Mill, who also argued in favor of laissez-faire, all right. So the argument of laissez-faire doctrine appealed to the capitalists of the capitalist class of the industrial revolutions, all right, who wish to be free of movement, of government regulation, of taxation, of tariffs, of no quota systems, because before then, government regulated strongly what people produce, how they distribute what was produced. So laissez-faire advocated for the free free enterprise system, right, for people to be able to realize their potential in the process of economic activities. So there are also arguments against laissez-faire. So what are the arguments against laissez-faire? So several scholars, laissez-faire also has been condemned. Several factors worked against the economic model. For instance, the tremendous growth of industry under laissez-faire led to the abuse of laissez-faire principle, including the use of child labor. So under the guise of let there be no restriction, you've seen how companies and industries are probably fostering what I can call child labor in Cote d'Ivoire. Since the era of cocoa production, right? One of the key debates now with regards to cocoa production, cocoa plantation, is the manner in which capitalist firms in Europe, all right, producing chocolate, all right, have contributed to child exploitation. Children are kidnapped from various parts of Africa and Asia and transported, smuggled to cocoa plantation in places like, for instance, Cote d'Ivoire, or let's say Fernando Po, Equatorial Guinea, to work as slaves in the agricultural plantation. All of these are some of the bedrock of the laissez-faire. The idea that there should not be interference, there should not be restriction, industries' activities should not be checked. All right, individuals, economic initiatives should not be scrutinized. That is why you have all kinds of abuses that someone can wake up, all right, somewhere in your location and float a pure water factory. Some few years ago, I was living in a location in Lagos where, from the top of my flat, I was looking through a slum environment, a compound that has been neglected. Some unscrupulous people who just came to the space, dug a well, all right, and they were mass producing bottled water and pure water. For several weeks, I stood and observed how people were manufacturing bottle and sachet water raw, without any refinement, without taking any nutritional, any sanitary measures and precautions. So they only supply this product at night. So in the day, you don't notice anything within the environment, but at night, you see trucks loading bottled water and pure water into the vehicle, and it distributes to Lagos. The pipe was just connected directly from the well and just running into the bottled water into the sachet, and they were sealing them. So these are the kind of stuff that laissez-faire encourage. So it was on this basis that many people started criticizing the doctrine. All right. So it was also many blame laissez-faire for encouraging monopolistic competition, as many businesses combine to control production and prices, all right, for the benefit of their own self. So competition was gradually eliminated under laissez-faire. So what you have said is that mercantilism and laissez-faire as the major economic ideologies that dominated the European continent during the Middle Ages, also referred to as the medieval period in history. These are the key the philosophy, economic model that was practiced from the 16th century up to the 18th century. So the argument for and against this economic thoughts, we have examined them, all right, we have scrutinized them. So what you need to do is to perhaps expand your knowledge. I've told you to go and read. Of course, there are key texts you need to read. I've mentioned quite a number of books in this class. The work by Adam Smith, all right, An Inquiry into the Wealth of Nations. All right, you need David Ricardo, who's written about the comparative theory, comparative advantage, all right, theory, and all of that. J.S. Mill. Locally, in the department there is Fundamental of Economic History, which I've mentioned, but you can get it in the department. So what you said is that mercantilism and laissez-faire have been identified as the two principal ideas that dominated the economic thought in Europe during the medieval period. All right, mercantilism promoted government regulations of a nation's economy for for the sake of augmenting state power at the expense of rival and national power. Okay, so that is to say that government control was to be exercised over industry and over international trade in accordance with that theory, all right, which places emphasis on national strength, that a central government is necessary, all right, to achieve economic development in a particular country. And the main aim of mercantilism was to build strong, wealthy, and independent nation states by promoting self-sufficiency. Okay, so laissez-faire also, on the other hand, advocates for the policy of domestic non-intervention, all right, non-interference, let things alone, all right, as I've mentioned, let free enterprise, if you like. So in summary, mercantilism suggests public or government economic control, while laissez-faire supports capitalism or individual control of the economy. That is what we are saying. So if you're asking this in our test or in the exam to identify the major differences between mercantilism and laissez-faire, I believe you should be able to reason on that. So you might be asked to compare, all right, more than 3 or 4 economic systems. So because I'm going to teach you capitalism and socialism also, all right. So you need to be vast about each of them. You need to know what each of them is about, all right, and be able to interrogate them, critically. Do you have any question, please? Any question? Is there any question, please?
No, sir.
Okay, so Alimat, why do we have 86 people in this class? How many people registered this course?
About 200.
So why are we having this number?
I don't know. But I announced it on the class group that we're having the class today. I don't know why they didn't turn up.
Okay. So it's not going to be my fault if people fail the course. Hope you know. Am I correct? So those who are
Yes,
not
sir.
here, so when they write the exam, they will say that I didn't get a good grade. Dr. Angela gave me a bad score and all this kind of stuff. So what do you think should be the situation? All right, having said that, we can go to the next topic. Do we still have time or you have another class?
We still have
Hello?
time, sir.
Right, so let's look at the next topic, which is Malthus' theory of population. So I decided to skip the other 2 topics, the economic system too, so that we can connect some of the dots. All right, it will make us to be able to connect rather than just being theoretical. So it is in this manner I want to look at the Malthus theory of population. All right, so our objective basically, will be stated clearly. So we want to look at Reverend Thomas Malthus, theory of population. He was the one who propounded the major classic work on population control, right? Right, in relation to development. I want to look at the main argument of Malthus, the criticism against his theory, then we'll be able to draw our own analysis. So in the end, all right, we should be able to discuss the Malthus theory of population, identify the main argument of Malthus, Thomas Malthus, and identify argument against his theory also. So the origin or the precursor to the introduction of the Malthus theory of the population was quite enormous. All right, so there were quite a lot of development in Europe at the time. All right, which generated discussions and controversies about how the world economy, right, or especially European population should be controlled in a way to manage or coordinate the meager resources available. So Reverend Robert Thomas, 1766 to 1834, was a prominent British scholar who was quite influential in the field of population, political economy. All right, he came up with the first major canonical literature, extensively interrogated, where he wrote about demography. So between 1798 and 1826, Reverend Thomas Malthus published 6 editions of his famous treatise. All right, an essay on the principle of population, all right, of course, which he continued to revise, severally, incorporating new data, new materials, especially to address criticisms and to convey changes in his own perspectives and subjects. All right, so I've mentioned that the situations under which this theory evolved was as a result of the unbridled population explosion in Europe, all right, which not even in Europe, in other places, which felt that the population, if it continues to grow, there will be little resources for people to cope or adapt to survive. Right. So, for instance, the population of India now is over 1.3 million. Right. China is also above. All right. India, with largest population, about 1.4 million. All right. Nigeria has been projected by 2050. All right, to have a population of 400 million people and all of that. So, about a few years ago, less than 5, 7, 8 years ago, Nigeria had a population of 200 million. Right, you could see that within a short time, the rate at which in which population is increasing, all right, is not the same way the economy is increasing or improving, and resources, means of survival, subsistence to take care of the population. So the thrust of Malthus' argument was that population increases in a geometric ratio. What your basic mathematics, geometric ratio: 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64, 128, 156, and so on and so on. All right. While the means of subsistence, that is the resources, the food, the housing, the health service, the schools, all right, they are increasing in arithmetic ratio. All right. Slowly: 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So that means the number, as I've mentioned, in 2015, Nigeria had a population of about 180 million, or less than 200 million. A decade later, Nigeria's population has skyrocketed, and now it's now being projected that it will reach 400 million by 2050. There's about 2 decades from now. How many hospitals will be produced between these 2 decades? How many schools will be produced with even the amount of universities in Nigeria? There are millions of students who are unable to be admitted into the universities, without speaking much about the primary and the secondary education. In terms of food security, so people are grappling with inflation, food shortages, household insecurity, and all of that. So this is just when we have a population of 230 million thereabouts. So how would people feel if the population increases to 400 million in about 2 decades or less? So Reverend Malthus argued that population increases in a geometric, fastly, tripling. All right, 2, 4, 16, tripling. As I've said, 200 million 5 years ago, 400 million in about 10 years' time, about a few years' time. All right, so population is increasing at a very rapid pace, whereas the means of survival is just crawling. So it was this thesis, especially his thesis, that if human population were allowed to increase in an uncontrolled way, then the number of people, all right, uh, would increase at a faster rate than the food supply, than hospital, than schools, all right, than even employment opportunities. So a point will come, according to Reverend Thomas, when human population will reach the limit up to which food resources could hardly support any further increase. All right, and this will lead to population crash caused by all kinds of issues like natural phenomena like famine, diseases, and all of that. Of course, when you have too much population and people are unable to feed themselves, then there will be all kinds of social vices, even natural disasters, crime, and all of that, diseases, and all this stuff. So these are because there will be congestion in houses. People will not have accommodations, so people have to live in face me and face you. All right, the multi-tenanted housing. They will lack basic healthcare support systems and all this. So the main argument of Malthus. So Malthus contended that population tend to increase faster than food supply supply of food available for its need. So he states that wherever a relative gain occurs in the production over population growth, that is a higher rate of population increase is stimulated. All right. So also on the other hand, he noted that if population grows faster than food production, then the growth is checked by famine naturally, disease, and war. So his theory does is that his theory contradicts the optimistic belief which characterized the 19th century, all right, with regards to the level of fertility, all right, in society. So he's saying that if he actually proposed a number of measures to reduce the population. So there's a positive and there's a negative checks, which he argued. So the main argument of Malthus is that uh, uh, nature has its own way of cutting population, all right, population level through crime, all right, through disease, through war, and all kind of vices, and that is true. So, people who are uncatered for, all right, will definitely find a way of taking care of themselves, and even those who fail to cater for them. All right, so the population will grow to a level whereby the rich will not be able to sleep with all the resources, and the poor who are unable to feed will feed, all right, on the rich. Right. So those are of course, when there's criminality, there's armed robbery. If you're a millionaire living in an environment and millions of people are unable to feed, they will always visit you, and in the process, probably, commit all kinds of atrocities, loot, and robbery and stuff. Then there is also when they don't have a house to stay, they come and sleep on the road, all right, in public spaces, all right, they contact diseases, all right, and this actually also help to reduce the population. They can instrument they can look at what is happening with banditry and insurgency in the north. All right, the poor, uncatered, you abandoned children who were recruited as Amajiris later some years ago. All right, they have now become war veterans. All right, carrying guns, embarking, being recruited into all kinds of sects. All right, Boko Haram, Lakurawas, and all the stuff, insurgents, kidnappers, and all the stuff. So, in fact, Malthus insisted that population will always expand to the limit of subsistence and will be held there by famine, by war, and ill health. So, hence, he tried to introduce quite a number of ways in which population can be controlled. All right, he introduced the positive and the negative checks. According to him, all of these vices should include contraception, all right, misery, all right, self-restraint, all right, which is felt they are not sufficient enough to control excessive growth. So his major argument is that he advocated for moral restraint in the form of strict premarital chastity, He advocated for delayed marriage as a way to curb population growth. That people should not be in a hurry to go and marry. All right, an average girl in this class now, if you ask, do a survey, everybody after next 2 years or 3 years, once you are done with NYSC, is to get married and get a man and start a life, start giving birth to children. Yeah, which is good. That's one of the things we created for. So Reverend Martos felt that strict premarital chastity should be encouraged. People should keep to themselves, all right, before they get married. Then also, people should not be in a hurry to get married, all right, and start giving birth to children in a way to control the population so that the mega resources available in the society can be enough to take care of the people. All right, so for Reverend Matthews, also, two types of checks could be deployed to hold the population within resource limits. So I told you about positive checks, which according to him, usually raise the death rate. All right, preventive ones, which, all right, lower the birth rate. So the positive checks includes hunger, disease, and war. So when you see some of the natural, the developments in our society, especially in Africa, all right, over time, you could see that there are some forces working behind, all right, from theory to practice. So war don't just happen. Epidemics don't just break up. Like today now, the major issues that is now threatening the global community is now Ebola. Democratic Republic of Congo has recorded the resurgence of Ebola virus disease. All right, we just came out of COVID-19. No, in Nigeria, several times we've been battling with Lassa fever, Lassa, yeah. All right. No, before then, from the 80s to 90s, there was the HIV/AIDS. All right. There is smallpox epidemics. There was yellow fever from the 1940s, 50s, yellow fever. Between 1920s and 1930s, there was the bubonic plague, which threatened the human existence across the world. Then between 1918 and 1920, there was the Spanish influenza, which killed millions of people across the world. So these are some of the checks put in place by evil people, the evil philosophers, and adopted by nation state and world government, perhaps to control population. That's my own interpretation anyway. So war, the First World War, the Second World War, all kinds of war, insurgency, banditry, all right, in my own estimations, are all part of the mechanisms, all right, to control population in various parts of the world. So, of course, hunger also, the inflationary issues around food, food, all right, food insecurity, and all of these macroeconomic changes which affect livelihoods of people are part of the instrumentalization, all right, of population control. All right. So he also introduced the preventive checks. All right. These are all kinds of very evil postulations in my own estimation. All right. That's my word. All right. So my interpretation is that Reverend Martus, theorization or propositions are quite very, very inimical to the morality. It's antithetical to human dignity. All right. And human survivor. Preventive checks he mentioned should include abortion, that people should engage in abortion instead of giving birth to children. All right. Birth control. All right. They should do birth control, probably family planning, if you like. All right. Birth control so that you don't conceive. All right. Prostitution. All right. Was part of also means through which Reverend Martus believed that people can control their urge. Yeah, that as human, as a man, you can have sexual urge. All right. But instead of marrying a girl or putting a wife at home, go and consult a prostitute and achieve your sexual satisfaction. All right, without necessarily having a commitment. A prostitute will not want to give you I'll give you children. So he feels that people should engage in prostitution, especially the men. Then there should be postponement of marriage and celibacy. So these are some of the no, only a few of them for me. I feel is quietly maybe celibacy for the unmarried, perhaps. All right, but how long can you be celibate? All right. So the idea of using hunger, using disease and war, for me, I think it is not only pernicious, it is evil. All right, to kill people because you think that your population should reduce. You want people to commit abortion, right, or engage in prostitution, all kind of, this for me, I think it's not well suited. So, what are the criticisms of Reverend Malthus' theory? So, Malthus has also been criticized, just like other, philosophers. He's been criticized for not seeing the scientific advances that affect both the two parts of his proposition, both the positive checks and the preventive checks, right? For instance, he fails to understand that the world population had grown slowly until the Industrial Revolution, when advances in sanitation, in technology, and in food distribution brought declining death rates. So that is that even part of the issues that aid population explosion is technology, all right, and all of that, and all of that aid, that helps the population control is technology, all right, which has reduced the death rate and all of that. So of course, technology has been a critical factor, but it has not been well appropriated in many developing countries. So the flaw in Malthus' theory, my belief is that it is not a crime for population to increase. What is important is the efficiency in the utilization of the mega resources, all right, or means of production, land, capital, all right, labor. For instance, in Nigeria, we say, yeah, even if we have 400 million people in Nigeria, the whole of Nasarawa, Niger State, for instance, is capable of feeding the whole of Africa if right technology, if right agricultural policies, social or enabling environment are put in place. So without banditry, all right, and with injection of modern technology, all right, in some of the vast arable land in Niger State, just to mention one state out of 36 states, Nigeria would not only be able to feed 2 million people, but it will be able to export the surplus food produced from just Niger State to feed Africa. And that is this is a major flaw. It tells you about the flaw of, we don't need to commit to abortion, to war, to crime, to celibacy, prostitution before we can control population. What is important is the efficient utilization of technology and natural resources that has been and we have been endowed with before we can develop. So more criticism is that people say that birth control has contributed to a decrease in the rate of growth of the world population. So there are countries in the past who, especially I think in Japan, all right, and I think China also enacted it sometime. I don't know whether it's still in place, where one person, one child policy. This has also decreased the rate of population. All right. So you are trying to solve a problem and you are creating more. In Europe, especially in Europe, Western Europe, they are actually going through all these kind of issues now because of these kind of policies. So there are now people who don't even want to have a child. Just last week, I was talking to one of my British friend, a girl, all right, who told me that she just lost her marriage about 2 weeks ago, and she was really grieving because she doesn't want to have a child, but the husband, all right, who is also a white person, wants to have a child. So she says she doesn't want to have a child, and the guy felt no, I must have a child, and the marriage ended. All right, so these are all of the stuff. So trying to control population creates even more problems. All right. So one philosopher had advocated that Africa is perhaps the future, that in the next 100 years or so or less, that Africa is going to take over of the remains of the Western society because the population of Western society would have probably reduced drastically that Africa, with the birth rate, with the massive production of population growth, will probably overtake most of these European countries. So I don't know how that is true. All right. So agricultural revolution, as I've mentioned, like massive food production can help to mitigate the impact of excessive population growth. All right, and make prosperity possible for a longer number of people, a larger number of people. So mechanized farming are now getting more, you know, uh, you know, they are increasing food sufficiency in serious countries, although not in Africa. All right, so Malthus didn't consider the role which mechanization can play, all right, in mitigating the deficit, all right, so that the means of subsistence and the population growth can meet and converge seamlessly. So Malthus was equally criticized for his belief that human society could never be made perfect. No, that's not true. So people have opposed all some of his postulations with critical evidence to show that population growth is not the problem, but it is efficient utilization of resources, right? The equitable redistribution of the resources, all right, as we're going to see in our next class when we're looking at the world economic system two, capitalism and socialism. One economic system concentrates uh, the means of production, land, capital, entrepreneurship in the hands of a microscopic elite, all right, a small, insignificant number of people who owns all the land, who owns all the means of production, while a large number of people only struggle to eat. About a few weeks ago here, I was interacting with a friend, all right, who's into a real estate, a big real estate manager in the UK, and told me about one of his clients, all right, a big politician in Nigeria who came again to say that he wants to acquire new properties in the UK. This person, according to this informant, has over 80 properties in different parts, all right, of the world, including many in Nigeria. Right? And in the place of this conversation, he saw a property that said, I'm interested in this property. I want to buy it. And the client just told him, but this property already belongs to you. You bought it 10 years ago. So you could see the avarice, the insatiable, the continuous yearning for accumulation, the conspicuous consumption of a typical African elite. So if the resources, all right, are well distributed and evenly utilized, population can grow, all right, to any limit, all right, foreseeable, all right, and the means of subsistence will go round because imagine that Nigeria implements the reverse the policy of accumulation. Look, there are people who have over 200 properties in Nigeria alone. So where some people do not even have a room over their head. So if we have a policy whereby people do not have right to accumulate more than one land, or government monopolize the land and appropriate to people build for people to own over 100 years, the resources will go around and it will be surplus. So in this course, we have said that Robert Thomas Malthus' theory of population indicates ways in which excessive population growth could be checked in human society. However, some of his postulations have been countered, all right, and rejected, with alternative solutions. So Malthus' theory of population, enunciated above, argues that if population were allowed to increase in an unbridled manner, then the number of people would increase at a faster rate than food supply, than social amenities, transport system, education, railway, hospitals, and all of that. So if not checked, he believes that human population will reach a limit to which food resources could support it, and any further increase will lead to population crash. All right, either in terms of natural disaster, famine, war, disease, and all this stuff. All right, so he introduced positive checks, which according to him include hunger, include disease, include war. All right, while preventive checks include abortion, birth control, prostitution, postponement of marriage and celibacy. All right. But all of these postulations for me has been rejected. All right. I don't know. So if you ask in the exam, to discuss Malthus theory, I expect you to be able to interrogate and put a position forward. So what is your own position? Do you believe that the preventive or the positive checks, all right, of Malthus should be implemented or adopted, or no? If you answer it without critically analyzing each position, you'll not get a passing grade. Any question, please? Do we have any question?